I have a number of limitations to enter into a really engaged dialogue with you. The first limitation is my inadequate knowledge of language. I've never been able to learn English language, so it was just picked up from everywhere. So at many times I find it difficult to verbalize my thoughts into a proper language. And the second limitation is I am stranger to you. We are meeting for the first time here. I have no understanding of your background, your level of understanding, and your attitude, and how you look things from your perspective. So therefore, we might go entirely different outlook. Even the matter may be one thing to be examined or to be discussed. And thirdly, before I come here, I received letter from Mr. Maharaja, and in that say I should give a introductory talk to Buddhism. Introductory talk to Buddhism in a one section is quite difficult. So therefore I was wondering how to start and how to end. So now you have put two important questions. I will try to referring to the basic principles of Buddha's teaching, and then coming back to these two different questions. So by that way, we might be able to build up a kind of dialogue or examination to these questions. All the different traditions of Dharma, or spiritual traditions, and also the philosophical traditions, which originated in a historical sequence of events. So therefore, if you look into the traditions more deeply, you will find something which is being influenced by the historical facts of that time. So Buddhism is not an exception. When Buddha appeared in India 2557 years ago, the Indian socio-political economic conditions do have some bearing on the Buddha's teaching. Of course, it is not entered into the basic principles of philosophy, but in a peripheral issue, there are many relevance or influence of that social condition of at that time. And then, of course, every religion or every philosophy are outcome of human search of liberation. All sentient beings, not even human beings, all sentient beings, all the living creatures have a common nature. The common nature is liking, happiness, and disliking unhappiness. A desire to achieve happiness, pleasure, and desire to discard pain and misery and unhappiness. This is the basic nature of a living creature. And by that, right from the smallest insects like an ant till the huge body like elephant and intelligent like a human being, by nature they are all looking for a liberation from bondage, liberation from misery and unhappiness. Less intelligent individuals, they can only think of discarding immediate pains and displeasures. They cannot examine what are the cause and how to eradicate the cause, and thereby achieve the permanent freedom from all kind of unhappiness and misery. So more intelligent people, which are the proponents of spiritual traditions and the philosophical traditions, they always look for the permanent liberation from the cause of all misery. So I think that inquiry is the basic cause of all the spiritual traditions, all the different dharma, all the different philosophy which are as a result of course, in the later stage there are number of material philosophy which does not inquiry into the permanent solution of all misery, but immediate social economic problems like Marxism or any other social philosophy or economic philosophy. The later stage, it deals with immediate problems. Otherwise, if we look to all the spiritual and religious traditions, their inquiry is what is the cause of misery to all sentient beings, and is there any way to overcome to these causes so that a permanent solution, permanent freedom from the inevitable unhappiness and pain and misery. So that's why the Buddha's first teaching after getting enlightenment, his first sermon in Sarnath is dealing with the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truth means what is misery, pain, and what is the cause of misery, and how to achieve the cessation of misery, and what is the path to achieve that cessation of misery. So this sums up the entirety of Buddha's philosophy. And in that process, Buddha is talking about the pervasive of misery, and he categorizes the misery into three categories: the misery of misery, the changing misery, and the vessel or the basis of misery. So these three, unless we see these three, the nature of these three different kind of misery, we are not able to see the misery as it is, and we are not able to find its cause in a pervasive way. Even we look back to the Siddhartha's life story. Siddhartha's life story goes very interesting. When he was visiting around the township, and he saw old age person, he saw a diseased person, he saw a dead body. And for us it is just common thing. Day in and day out we see these things, but it does not bother us, it does not give us any special sensational feeling. But Siddhartha has the sensitiveness. His sensitiveness was so sharp, and he can relate these things to all sentient beings as a pervasiveness. And his dialogue with his chariot driver, and he asked him, what is this? And he says, this is old age. And then his second question was, the old age comes to few selected people, or it is inevitable to all? And the driver says, no, whosoever has a youthful body, and it is bound to be enter into the old age, and the time goes by. And even Prince Siddhartha, you also at this moment very youthful, but after 50 years, 80 years, you also go into this kind of situation. And similarly, disease, it comes to few people, or it comes to everybody. Death is so the chariot driver's reply was that this is inevitable to all, whosoever has born, and that is indefinitely to meet with death. So that pervasiveness, and no one is free from going through this kind of pain. Then he saw the essencelessness of the worldly pleasure. And then he also realized that all the pleasure which is experienced now is going to be disappear, disintegrate, and it is all impermanence. And all the pleasure which we are experiencing now is bound to change. And when it changes, the absence of itself, you are enjoying something very pleasurable. When it decays, it goes away. That going away itself is the cause of pain. And that is a changing misery. And this changing misery, and this misery of misery, like obvious misery like disease and death and old age, this, both of this, the changing misery and the misery of misery, it happens on our body. Our body is the result of the karmic force, the karmic force and the mental developments. The karmic force is been created or been accumulated due to the mental developments. Our mind has basic three developments: the attachment, the heatedness, and the ignorance. Rag, dvesh, and moh, the Sanskrit says. Rag, attached to something; dvesh, disliking, and hate to something. And the cause of these two mental developments is the ignorance of the reality. So due to these three developments of mind, has created the force of karma, and that force of karma gives you a body. And as soon as you are bound with your body, and you have no freedom to operate your consciousness without any baggage of the karmic force and the mental developments, you are not free, and you are bound to perpetuate into the three different kind of miseries. So this is how the Buddha realizes and see the things as happening in the reality. And therefore, if you need to get freedom to this bondage of creation and karma, the mental developments and the karmic force, you have to see the things as it is. You have to see the essencelessness or the not the interdependent nature, all the phenomenon, it may be the ultimate truth or it may be the relative truth, all these are exist through interdependent nature, interrelatedness. This interrelatedness is the basis of the Buddhist technical terminology is Patit Samutpan. The Sanskrit word is Patit Samutpan. That means all the existence exist interdependently and also just designated from the name and the mind, the thought. So this is the basic philosophy of Buddha, the interdependent arising. Interdependent arising gives you the insight of the possibility of eradicating the entire cause of the misery, that means the ignorance. Ignorance can be completely eradicated. So this is a basic outlook of Buddha's teaching. Now, the Buddha's teaching gives three different approach. If you are just a beginner, an ordinary person, how you approach to interest of the Buddha Dharma, and if you are more matured and have more capacity to think the things, how to approach, and then if you are having the highest intellect and a capacity of mind, then how you approach to the things. So that is, in the Buddhist terminology, we call it Tri Purusha, the Adam Purusha, the beginner, the Madhyam Purusha, the middle person, and the Mahapurusha, or the Mahaperson, the greatest person. And these three have different objectives to achieve and different ways to achieve to that objectives. Now, I have mentioned about the karmic force and the mental defaultments, the klesha and the karma, and how to determine which kind of action is positive action and which kind of action is a negative action, and which are neutral. Any action can be into three categories: a positive action, a negative action, or neutral action, which is not positive, not negative, or good action or bad action. The criteria is you look to the nature of action. Does it cause harm or any kind of violence to any sentient being, directly or indirectly? If your action, which has the possibility of harming to any other sentient being, directly or indirectly, that action is negative action. If you completed that action, then you have accumulated a negative karma in your consciousness, and that is going to give a result. That result would be in the nature of pain and unhappiness. And if your action is directly or indirectly cause benefit, help to any other sentient being, that is positive karma. And that positive karma will also have an influence to your consciousness, and it will give result, and that result would be in the form of pleasure and happiness. So this is the nature of karmic theory, how to give the karma. And your action does not cause benefit or harm to any other person. And that karma does not have any force. And it is neither positive nor negative. And it will not carry any kind of result afterwards. So then the question comes, why the violence act is negative act? Why the no-violence act is positive act? So there are two different ways of looking at it. The beginners, which I am talking about, the Adam Purush, their logic is that if I harm to any other sentient being, that sentient being would feel the suffering. And due to that cause of suffering to the other sentient being, will definitely cause a result into the unhappiness to me. So therefore, the attitude or the logic is self-centered. It will give me the bad result, therefore I must refrain from all kind of harming things or violence things. And there the attitude comes out of the self-centered way of thinking. I shall have to be suffer in consequence, therefore I must refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misbehavior, lying, all these physically or workally or mentally negative things I should not do, because if I do it, I shall suffer. I shall have to pay the consequence. The result would be bad for me. So this is from the selfish viewpoint, one refrains from the negative action. And the greater people, they do not think from the selfish viewpoint. They think that all sentient beings are equal. I do not like misery, the other persons also do not like misery. Therefore, the other person is much more important, the other sentient being is much more important than myself. So therefore, for the sake of others' well-being, for the sake of others not to experience any misery or pain, I should not harm to any other. So I must exchange the other. I put the other to my own place, and then I put the other's place. If the other harms to me, how I feel. And similarly, I must be understand if I do some harmful to the others, and it will not be good or not be taken positively by the others. And due to the importance of others' well-being and others' welfare, refrain from violence action. And that also the understanding of interdependently origination. And ultimately, the self and the other, they are all relative thing. And in this relation, we cannot differentiate the self from the other, and the other from the self. All things are, if we look from the philosophical viewpoint, all are equal and all are interdependent. By this way, to understand the interdependent origination is the basic thing, how to refrain from, how to keep away from the all kind of violence action. And that is how we look to the basis of Buddha's teaching, and when it applies to a social political field, the basic philosophy is non-violence. Non-violence is the essence of the entire Buddha's teaching, and non-violence is the practice of non-violence is the entire essence of the practice of Buddha Dharma in one's life. So when I work as a community leader for the Tibetans in Exile, when I was elected as chief of the executive in the Tibet government in Exile, I mentioned to my people all my action, all my decisions will be governed by two basic principles: truth and non-violence. So anything goes contrary to the principle of truth and non-violence, whatever it may be, very popular or unpopular, like or doesn't like by the people, my decision will be governed by these two basic principles of truth and non-violence. And fortunately, we are in exile. We do not have any territory. We do not need to maintain law and order. We do not need to defend any territorial border. So therefore, just in exile, as a community, we are only to look after the welfare of the Tibetans in exile, which is very easy, and therefore we were able to abide by these two basic principles, and we need not to indulge into any kind of violence or untruthful. Otherwise, the today's principle of diplomacy, which is largely based on untruthfulness, and which are all built up things, concocted things. So that is a way how to deal diplomatically. So we are, we do not need do any this kind of diplomacy, and we are able to deal the things quite straightforwardly. And in this context, most difficult thing was to engage with authorities of the People's Revolt of China. During my tenure, we have several course of dialogue with them. 9 times His Holiness representatives and PRC authorities have a extensive dialogue to find some resolution to the Tibet issue. And during that dialogue, to remain truthful and not to indulge into the modern techniques of the negotiation or diplomacy and say things very bluntly, to call a spade, so to speak, was considered to be unwise by many of our friends. But we are able to stick to our own way of dealing, and we never tell any lie or any untruthful or try to engage them by kind of appeasing methods. So otherwise the other things are quite easy. Then there were a number of so-called infrastructure and development projects in the Tibetan settlement camps and Tibet settlement areas. And that involves in economic affair. Of course, during my tenure, I privatized all the business ventures which are owned by the Central Tibet administration, because it is almost impossible to do things truthfully and without any exploitation. So we have privatized all the business ventures. But in spite of that, even the privatizing all business ventures and sold them out, yet there are agricultural development projects, water conservation, and environmental things. There are a lot of infrastructure constructions and developments in Tibetan settlement camps. And that is a difficult task, because apparently, or not even apparently, it may go into exploitation of nature or exploitation of people that need to be very carefully guided. And for that we have prepared a cross-cutting criteria to all our economic projects. And we put forward 4 cross-cutting criteria. The first is no violence. Any project which directly or indirectly causes violence to anyone, that project will not accept it. No violence is the first criteria. And the second criteria was eco-friendly. So any project which is causing harm to the ecosystem, environment, that project we will not accept. And the third is sustainable. Whether the project will be sustained in the future technologically and equipment and raw material from both sides, it is sustainable or not. That is to be examined. And the fourth is the benefit, the profit or benefit will reach to the poorest of the poor. There are many projects which helps to the rich people, and their benefit doesn't go to the poorest of poor. So this 4 criteria has been very strictly applied to all our economic projects, and by that way we make a conscious effort to do things according to the Buddha's teaching and also according to the law of nature. Not harming, not exploiting, and not consuming more than the need. So these things, the Buddha's teaching and Gandhi's practical experience, which helped us quite largely. Then the second question about the caste system in India. 2,500 years ago, when Buddha appeared in India, at that time the caste system, and particularly caste discrimination, was at the high level, because all the Vedic tradition taught about the different nature of caste, and thereby each caste has its own set of rights and responsibilities, and the concept of untouchability, and certain caste people cannot touch to the high caste people, and high caste people cannot touch to the low caste people, and low caste people cannot study the Vedic philosophy or Vedic literature, and they cannot enter into temples, and their responsibility is to make cleanliness, to sweep the dirt and something like that, to serve the people. So this kind of discrimination is very much there. And when Buddha began to teach, and he abolished the caste system altogether, and he taught that all humanity are equal, same, there is no difference of caste. And among the Buddha's disciples in Buddhist Sangha, many highly placed Arahantas and Bodhisattvas used to belong to the so-called low caste. And after Buddhism spread in India, the caste system was quite reduced. And even the Hindu tradition, the caste system does not disappear, but certain equality has been established, and the exploitation of low castes are much reduced due to Buddhist influence. But after the 11th century and 12th century, Buddhism disappeared from India. Then again the caste system revived. Not only revived, it was being consciously encouraged by the colonizers, because it is easy to divide the people. And by the Mongols, before British, India was occupied by the Mongol emperors. And during the Mongol emperors also, the encouragement of caste system was very much. Then later on, British Empire, they also used this for dividing the Indian community. And that is still not like in the ancient time, but still you can feel it, you can see in the many places of Indian community. And that lead to a very unique event. That unique event was the appearance of Bhimrao Ambedkar, a low caste leader, and he was a barrister from London, and he became very highly educated, and he was very respected by the low caste people. And he has differences with Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi is also very much in favor of opposing the caste system, and Gandhi tried to uplift the low-trodden caste. Gandhi tried to persuade the religious leaders, allow them to enter into the temples and study the religious scriptures, so on and so forth. Gandhi was very much involved in upliftment and the abolition of just do away with the caste system. And he gave a new name to the low caste people, Harijan. Hari is the name of the God. Jan means the people. The Harijan, the translation is the people of God. He considered the low caste people are more near to the God than the high caste people. But I don't know what was the basic political reason. Ambedkar and Gandhi has a certain difference, and later on they have compromised, and they have entered into some agreement that's called Pune Agreement. And then Gandhi and Ambedkar both jointly worked for the independence of India. Then later on, Ambedkar had the opportunity to work in the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution, the present Constitution. The present Constitution is basically been drafted by Bhimrao Ambedkar. Although he was not a free hand and he was not happy with the outcome of the Constitution, then he was looking for a way to bring a revolution against the caste system. And on that process, he was being approached by Christians, he was being approached by the Sikhs, and he was being approached by the Muslims, offering him that if you convert into Muslim or to Sikh or to Christian, you can do much better work for the dismantling the caste system altogether. But he was not satisfied. He studied all the scriptures, and later on he was being influenced by Burmese Buddhist monk, and then he, at the end of his life, he converted into Buddhism, and several hundred thousands of the downtrodden caste people are being converted into a Buddhist fold. They are now called Ambedkarites or sometimes New Buddhists. Unfortunately, they do not have a in-depth and comprehensive study of Buddhism, because after conversion into Buddhism, Baba Ambedkar lived only few months and he passed away. And he was not able to give a Buddhist education to his followers. So therefore his followers are more aggressive, political minded. Now they have become much mild, and they have more educated people at this moment. The caste system is an illogical thing, and also the caste system is not a just way of looking to a group of humanity. And during the independence movement of India, there are two very powerful leaders who are against the caste system. One was the Mahatma Gandhi and the other was the Bhimrao Ambedkar. And Bhimrao Ambedkar was very much part of the Indian constitution to create the constitution. A constitution has very strongly worded that caste system would be illegal. And there are constitutional provisions that anyone who indulge into caste discrimination, it will be a criminal and it can be punished, very severely punished. But unfortunately, the constitutional provisions were not able to implement in real life. And I consider this due to the present India's system of so-called multi-party democracy. The multi-party democracy was very much condemned by Gandhi right from the beginning. Gandhi was not in favor of a parliamentary system. Gandhi was not in favor of multi-party system. And he always talk about a decentralized Swaraj. Swaraj means autonomy, people's autonomy. And the real democracy can be established having no centralized power, and the central government would be only responsible for foreign relations and diplomacy relations with other countries. Otherwise, the entire socio-economic of the nation should be governed by village level. And he named it village Swaraj, village autonomy. And the village people must be manage the entire welfare of the village people's health, education, economy, social welfare, everything should be decentralized. Not only decentralized, his exact words were no centralized. There should not be any centralization. But which was not implemented by the Gandhi was assassinated just 1 year after the independence. And his recommendation was, as soon as independence was gained on the 15th August of 1947, he is recommending that Congress party, that was become the ruling party of the independence, Congress party must be dissolved. And the entire Congress party members must become the welfare service, social workers of the villages. They should go to the villages and they should work as social workers, social service in the village. But no one had pay any attention to Gandhi's recommendation. So after 68 years of India's independence and after 62 years of the adoption of the constitution, the caste system is still visible. And now this caste system is being used by the various political parties. And it is good for the political parties to build up so-called vote bank. And if they have a particular caste in their favor, the entire voters of that caste can be remain in bloc for a specific political party. So therefore, the basic principles of the democracy, rule of law, or the people's ruling, all this cannot go with the competition of the various political parties. Unless there is a will of common, or common will, their democracy seems to be very difficult. The choice of the system of two-party or system of several party, whatever it may be, that is based on competition. And the system of competition can only survive on the basis of selfish interest, because competition is self-winning and the others losing. Competition never aims for self-losing and the others winning. So winning or losing is a very inappropriate choice. If there could be any choice, that should be of a win and win situation. Not a competition, but a cooperation. Real people's role can be established if there is a cooperation. And cooperation and competition never goes together. So that is how I look from my viewpoint. So it is most unfortunate part of India that they still have the reminiscence of the caste system and the caste discrimination. Not only the caste system, there is a discrimination among the castes. And this is one of the most disadvantages of this great nation to prosper properly. Sorry, I consumed 1 hour completely, so I think I should stop here. And any other comments or other queries? Welcome.
Rinpoche, in your time with the government, you attempted to have relationship with China. Is that true? It must be very difficult if your principles are truth and nonviolence, because I don't pretend to fully understand the Chinese government, but my very naive belief is that they do not operate with principles of truth and nonviolence. So I wonder, I know this must be very difficult for the Tibetan government in exile to communicate with and to work with the Chinese government. And I wonder if you could tell us anything about where that is right now, how the relationship is now. Is there any attempt, are there further continuing talks or dialogue with the government in exile and the central Chinese government?
What is the present situation? I have no knowledge. Since my retirement on the 8th of August 2011, I dissociate myself from all the organizations. So when I give up, when I complete my tenure, there was no communication with the PRC at that moment, because by the January 2010, the last course of dialogue, at that time we have submitted a note on memorandum. 2009, we have given them a comprehensive memorandum. That memorandum is spelled out all details how a genuine autonomy can be granted to the entire Tibetan people within the constitutional framework of PRC. So PRC has won the constitution. Of course, they do not implement it, but there is a written constitution. This is called Constitution of People's Republic of China. And then there is another law which is called the autonomy law. That is also passed by the People's Parliament, and that is a legal document. And after 7 rounds of dialogue with them, the Chinese representative says, His Holiness is talking about genuine autonomy, real autonomy, high-level autonomy. There are many different terms His Holiness has used, but he has not come up to us what is his demand, what exactly he wants, what kind of autonomy he is asking for. So we said, well, we are prepared to tell you what His Holiness is wanted. Then we prepared memorandum on genuine autonomy to all Tibetan people. So we have quote clause by clause the constitution and autonomy law, and each clause we say this is the clause in the constitution and this is the clause in the autonomy law, and which have not given to the Tibetan people. Now how this can be implied to the Tibetan people, what are the methods for applying. So that was the memorandum. It was a comprehensive document, about 55 pages, which is available in the internet. English, Tibetan, Chinese, all languages are available. That is the basic document. And after giving this document, they have commented that this is not less than independence in disguise, and it is not applicable, and you have not understood the constitution, and constitution does not mean. So they have certain comments, and in response to their comments, we have again submitted a note which is not on memorandum, and that is second document, and in that we have explained what your comments are not true and what we mean this, and this document also given to them during the 9th round of talks in the beginning of 2010. And after giving that document, they have no genuine response to that, because all our documents are very clearly based on constitutional provisions and the legal provisions, and what we have interpreted was correct in accordance with the Chinese law professionals' view as well, and the international legality also supports to our point. And these two documents are most important document. And after submitting this second document, then during my tenure, I could not have another round of talk with them. And then after my retirement, I do not know, but the new administration might have some different channels of communication that I suppose, but I have no knowledge about it. So now the His Holiness position is very clear. If anybody reads the memorandum and the note on the memorandum, our position is crystal clear. We have dealt each point of the constitution and of the law. So, and we also argue that it is very easily possible to be implemented. Now there are two basic differences between them. In our memorandum, what we have said is the Tibetan nationalities are one nationality among the 54 minority nationalities in China. So therefore, the autonomous region should be one administration. At this moment, the Tibetans are divided into 11 small parts. Tibet Autonomous Region is about 60% of the Tibetan people, 40% are out. The 40% are Tibet Autonomous prefectures and districts and many other small things. They are divided. So what we are demanding is to make one Tibetan Autonomous Region, because it is one minority nationality, and the entire Tibetan people should be within one autonomous region. So that is their most objection. So you are asking for the greater Tibet, and this is not possible. But unfortunately, we didn't have a further round of dialogue, and it can be negotiated, but the negotiation didn't take place. You were saying something?
I was just trying to clarify all of this in my own mind. I understand that you asked to just be recognized by what is laid out in the PRC Constitution, and they denied that because they think the Dalai Lama is still seeking power in Tibet. You said, but in that round of dialogue, you were seeking autonomy for one of the 11 regions in Tibet?
11 regions combined as one Tibet Autonomous Region.
Okay, so that's not the same as the middle path? Or am I misunderstanding?
That is middle path. Middle path means not seeking separation, and not satisfied with the present situation.
Yeah.
So one end is seeking separation, which we are not seeking.
Right.
We are very much willing to abide by the constitution of PRC.
Okay.
And whatever constitution provides, we are not asking anything out of constitution.
Okay.
So constitution is constitution, and whatever provided in the constitution should be. For example, the constitution says all the minority people, autonomous region, must use their language as their official language. And they should be able to do every work in their language. Even in the courts, they are able to make up applications and arguments in their own language. So which is not implemented, but the constitution is saying that. So what our demand is, yes, this constitution provision is this must be implemented. Or you change the constitution, then there's a different question. If you amend the constitution, then there's a different question. Then similarly, the constitution says the autonomous regions must have the first saying to the natural resources, to exploit the natural resources and how to use it and how to use the profit out of the natural resources. And all the exploitation taken out of the natural resources must be initiated by the autonomous region administration. And this is not happening. All the natural resources are being exploited by the central government. So what we say is, this is the constitutional provision, this is the law provision, and we must get to be granted these provisions to be implemented. And similarly, the autonomous regions should have the control of immigration. Just like the Hong Kong has the control in the immigration. And the constitution and the autonomy law both says the autonomous regions must have power to regulate the immigration. And but the Tibetans does not have. So we say that this. We does not say that Chinese should go out or Chinese should not come to the Tibet Autonomous Region, but there must be some regulation what kind of criteria be fulfilled if someone is settled to Tibetan Autonomous Region or someone to immigrate there. There should be some regulation like Hong Kong. So these are the provisions of the Constitution and provisions of the law, and they should be implemented. If you are interested, you should look into the memorandum.
And the PRC response is available on the internet as well?
Their responses are not available. Their responses are only in the news, which are not recorded in there. They only tell these things in the news conferences and their statements, but which are not recorded in our website.
Just regarding what you said about how the caste system is still visible, and maybe you could clarify for me. I've heard that the new prime minister that was elected in India is from a lower caste than has ever been elected before. But I've also heard that he is he's the head of a very conservative and nationalist party. And I've also heard that a lot of people a lot of left-wing people are very worried about what he's going to do, especially with the Tibetan situation, because he has expressed a desire to cooperate with China more and become partners in certain things, and how that might affect the Tibetan community. So I was just wondering about your thoughts on that, maybe.
I don't know Mr. Narendra Modi is belonging to some low caste or not low caste, because there's no declaration in which caste he is belonging. And even his marriage status are not clear. And only recently he says he is married and he has some wife. Otherwise, most of his documents do not show his marriage status. And he is what I should say, quite conservative. That is true. Now, for the Tibet issue, I think it is very early to make a statement. Next week, the President of China is coming to India on 17th, 18th, and 19th of this month. Xi Jinping comes to Gujarat on the 17th and to Delhi 18th and 19th. 19th he is going back. So this is a very high profile visit, and both sides are making enormous preparations. So Mr. Modi is very much eager to economic cooperation. And economic cooperation usually affects the political cooperation as well. So it is very difficult to make a judgment. And one thing very clear, Xi Jinping has taken over as president more than a year now, almost 2 years. And he had not made any statement about Tibet policy. Neither he said he will continue what Hu Jintao has adopted, nor he has said anything he will make some changes. He is completely kept quiet. So that is, many people interpret a good sign, many people interpret a bad sign. That's yet to judge. This is true that he has not made any. And particularly during the time of their parliament session in China in the month of March, and there is a tradition to meet the parliament members of different regions, and he met the members from the Tibetan regions, and in that meeting he never said anything about the future, and he only said economic development is important, and culture preservation is also important. Minorities' culture preservation is important. That is the very first any president of China have said this. So this is something noteworthy. And he is carry out a very comprehensive research inside Tibet and Xinjiang and all the minority communities. They are doing some independent kind of research, and that I don't know what will the result of. As far as the party line thinking is concerned, during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee visited China, he have accepted the word part of China. So that was for the first time. The Congress government, all the past time, their wording used to be Tibet is the government of India recognized that Tibet is an autonomous region of People's Republic of China. This is the official position. When Vajpayee visited Beijing, he was so pressurized and he had changed that word. Tibet autonomous region is a territorial part of People's Republic of China. The territorial part is a new wording. And this statement is now ignored by the other government, Manmohan Singh government. They have not repeated this anymore. Now, let us see what the president visits. There will be some joint press conference and what kind of statement he will give in. During the last foreign minister's visit after this new government, before the new government, the foreign minister visit, one new thing happened was they have not mentioned anything about Tibet during their joint press conference. So that is also a significant change. Now, one thing which I have noticed as a positive happening is the Foreign Minister of India, Sushma Swaraj, mentioned to the Chinese Foreign Minister that if you insist to India to recognize one China, then China should also reciprocate recognizing one India. So this is a new statement, and she repeated it the day before. If China expects us to recognize the one China, then they must recognize the one India. So these are quite bold statements. So now there's a few days to wait, and we will see what will happen. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rinpoche, thank you very much.
You are most welcome. Thank you.
Group picture? Yeah, sure. Yeah.